Hey guys, and welcome back to Craig's Call here on 90.3 FM. It's the top of the hour, and you're listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair, New Jersey, live from the campus of Montclair State University, and online, WMSCradio.com, live 365 on your smartphones and tablets, soon to be on the iHeartRadio app. Joined in Studio A by Alex Hand, Sean Martin, and Sean McChesney. And now on the phone is Zac Cooper, the MMA fighter from Georgia. Zac, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, no worries. How's everything going?
Everything's doing good. It feels good to be back on the air after my semester off. And Zac, let's jump right in and start with how you got involved with mixed martial arts.
Well, I kind of got involved, way back in the day. My dad would rent the UFC VHSs at the old Hollywood Video that's not even there anymore. And I don't really remember watching them too much, but I think subconsciously I kind of fell in love with mixed martial arts and just realized it was a cool aspect, the whole individual sport. So eventually, my whole life I played baseball, basketball, football, and all that, mainly baseball. And I got kind of tired about that and thought about wrestling, but didn't quite pull the trigger until my sophomore year of high school. And eventually, I would quit baseball the year after, and I would find my way into MMA by actually winning a free membership to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is pretty much wrestling with submissions and all that. And I would do that in the summers after wrestling, and then eventually, right before I went off to college, I locked up with Brian Stan and George Lockhart and did some stand-up before I went to Georgia Southern, and then eventually found my way to the hardcore gym where I am now in Athens, Georgia.
That sounds awesome, and, winning a free membership like that certainly doesn't hurt. So you've been fighting so far as an amateur. How has your amateur career in mixed martial arts developed over your time?
It's been real up and down. It's developed nicely at the end. I ended up with a 9-4 record. I was a 145-pound champion, and I beat the 135-pound champion as well. I started off real successful. I had a 3-0, I think, 4-0, and then I lost a couple straight, and things went downhill, and it took me a little bit to get back on my winning ways to get that win streak. But eventually, I ended up winning the 145-pound title last year in March for a big promotion, and then I ended up defending it in front of actually the UFC president, Dana White, which was probably the highlight of my career so far. I had a comeback victory there. And then eventually I dropped down to 135 and beat the champion there, which was my final amateur fight, actually, in October. And I made the decision to go pro, which I will be doing later on this year.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations. When you say make the decision to go pro, what does that exactly entail? What's sort of the process in that?
Well, as an amateur, you obviously don't get paid.
Right,
so
of course.
That's a huge thing. So being professional now, it's pretty much just starting my journey into the UFC, which is my main goal, to become a UFC champion. And now I start to get paid for every single fight. I can get sponsors. I'm more of the feature attractions on the fight cards. And my first fight's actually going to be on February 20th, which is pretty close from now. It's about 4.5 weeks, I think. And it's going to be in Augusta, Georgia versus an undefeated amateur fighter. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Wow, yeah, February 20th, less than a month away. What's sort of your training been like, or have you not really gotten too much into that?
No, I'm always training. I'm constantly training. Once you have a specific date set for a fight, you can kind of just figure out when you need to go hard and when you need to lighten up and get ready for that weight cut. And I'm always in the gym, but when we're closer to a fight, I'm doing 2-a-days. I'm making sure I'm eating perfect. I'm staying away from the pizza, which is hard for me. But it's just doing the same thing, working every aspect of MMA: the stand-up, the striking, the clinch, the ground game. Transitioning between all those. So it's been awesome.
And Zac, you said you have a background in wrestling, so I think it's safe to say that that's probably one of your biggest strengths.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely my biggest strength. As of late, though, I would say stand-up, the striking aspect of MMA, has been one of my biggest strengths because I've focused on it so much, me and my coach have, that I've just kind of become obsessed with watching how other people incorporate their game into MMA, and I've been able to use that really well and incorporating that in my game of MMA, and I'm able to use my wrestling to set up some striking and vice versa.
Well, Zach, that's great. And real quick, back to your fight on the 20th. Is that something that's going to be televised or streamable online?
Actually, I think I'm pretty sure it'll be streamed live through Ustream on the promotion's website, which is conflictmmapromotions.com. It's not 100%, but that's what he usually does for his fights. And eventually you'll see me on TV, though, so don't worry about that.
And we can't wait for that. And, be sure to send us the link, and we'll be more than happy to help promote, and people can watch you fight. Recently, the UFC Fight Night in Boston was huge. And being a former martial artist myself, I love talking to martial artists about sort of what they saw and what happened at this event. And really, there was the two main fights. And let's start with Showtime Pettis versus Eddie Alvarez. What were sort of the things you saw, and what do you think really happened in terms of the upset to Showtime?
Anthony Pettis' weakness is wrestling and being pressured by wrestlers. We kind of saw that his very first fight in the UFC against Clay Guida, and then his last fight where he lost his title against Rafael dos Anjos. He just pressured him the whole time, didn't give him any room to explode with those kicks, and just kept taking him down and made it a really tough fight. And, that's what Alvarez did. Alvarez is usually in very exciting fights, but he did what he had to do. This was a title eliminator fight, so he might get the next shot at the title. And it wasn't very exciting, but he had to take it in deep waters where Anthony Pettis is weak, and that's what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Pettis, a very explosive fighter, but Eddie Alvarez really stuck to his guns, put a lot of pressure on him, and, he's been a champion at every level he's been at, so the fact that he was able to get a big win over the former champ, it certainly helps his cause. And now, the main event, TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz, was one of the better fights I think I've seen in a while, especially because it wasn't a pay-per-view. The fact that it was free, too. I was very surprised. You said in our off-air talks that you actually trained with TJ Dillashaw. So what were sort of your opinions of this fight?
I did. I trained alongside him this summer, which was an awesome experience. But, it was a very, very tough fight to score. It was one of my most anticipated fights to watch. Seeing Dominic Cruz come back from all of his injuries, TJ being one of my favorite fighters, having similar type of movements and footwork as Dominic, And at the end of the day, the fight was pretty much based on TJ's aggression and his volume of the striking versus the evasion and precision of Dominic Cruz. And when I first watched it, I initially scored it for TJ, and then I watched it again and realized I had no idea what was going on, like how to score that. It's too tough for those judges to do, especially when they're all located on different sides of the cage. So with what one angle looks like Cruz getting hit, you could realize he's evading that punch by centimeters pretty much. So it was a super tough fight to score. That's why you saw a 4-1 Cruz, 4-1 Dillashaw, and then the last judge had a 3-2 Cruz. So at the end of the day, it was awesome to see Cruz come back and from that layoff and just perform, just near what he was doing before. And at the end of the day, either man, if Dillashaw got his hand raised, I would have been happy with that. And Cruz got his hand raised, so, you got to give props to him. Yeah,
absolutely. One of the best fighters at his weight class for sure. His ability to really dodge strikes and answer, he was criticized a lot for an inability to finish fights. He doesn't exactly get knockouts, but when you're as great at, avoiding and setting up your opponent as he is, you don't necessarily have to. Winning by decision works. And TJ Dillashaw really seemed to tire out as that fight progressed.
Yeah, exactly. We saw, I think, second or third round, he was a lot more flat-footed, and then he realized in rounds 4 and 5 that's where he needs to take over because Cruz has been out so long. So, he came at him rounds 4 and 5. Those are the rounds I think he won. But Cruz also sustained a foot injury, which hurt him in the later rounds. So, both of those guys were in shape. They were ready to go, but TJ just couldn't keep up. He was missing, and he was getting frustrated.
Yeah, and we're speaking to Zac Cooper, now a professional MMA fighter, breaking down a little bit of the UFC. And, up here in Montclair, New Jersey, right down the road is the Prudential Center. And we're going to have a nice fight, too, between Anthony Rumble Johnson and Ryan Bader. What are sort of just your predictions for that fight? What do you expect to see?
I expect, Anthony Johnson's a Georgia boy, so I'm going for him, and I honestly think he will win, regardless of that bias. But I think he'll probably knock out Bader just by the way he's been on a tear lately. He's just been straight just killing people at 205, and Bader's a little bit smaller than him. So, his wrestling's very good, but I don't think he'll be able to get Anthony Johnson down to the ground. And the only way I could see Bader winning that fight is if he takes it way late and just lays on top of him, pretty much like we saw with Alvarez and Pettis, and just takes a split decision or a boring decision. But I see Anthony Johnson winning by knockout in the first round for sure.
And now, Zach, as an MMA fighter who's growing his craft, obviously, you pay a lot of attention to the sport at the highest level. What are some things you take away from watching these fighters perform?
It's always good watching fighters. You can take different things from every single fighter, no matter what it is, especially at the highest level. I love paying attention to the different styles everyone has, from Dominic Cruz's evasion and footwork to the guy like Anthony Johnson, who's going to be throwing power and looks like he's plotting, but he's just using those small movements to try to get in and out. So what I like to do is I like to look at different patterns and movements people have. And me and my coach really do that a lot. We read articles and we'll text each other and then apply those articles into my game and practice them at night during our practices. So we take everything from everyone. A lot lately I've been taking from TJ Dillashaw, Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz, Conor McGregor, those guys. We try to implement different aspects of their game that work for my body type and work for my frame in order to make me the best fighter I can be.
And, Zach, I just want to thank you very much for joining us on our program today. And real quick, how can our listeners stay up to date on what you're doing and what you're up to and how to, keep involved with you on social media?
Yeah, for sure. I'm on Facebook, Zac Cooper. It's twice. Don't ask why. I'm on Twitter at Zac Austin Cooper. My name's spelled Z-A-C. And then Austin Cooper after that. And then I can't quite remember my Instagram name, but I'm sure if you search my name, Zac Cooper, you'll find it there.
All right, Zach, thank you very much for joining us today. Be sure to keep in touch. I'd very much like to watch a stream of your fight if it is available, and hopefully someday real soon we see you on TV.
Thanks, Zach.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, and good talking to you, man.
Thank you very much. All right, that was Zac Cooper, live from Georgia. You were listening to Craig's Call here on 90.3 FM. If you like what you heard, give me a follow on Twitter at Seagorbs94. You can listen to my podcast, the Interstate of Green, Code Green podcast, on iTunes. We'll be back next week, 4 to 5:15. For Alex, Sean, and Sean, I'm Craig Gorbunoff, and we'll see you guys next week.